Outlining. Writing a novel without actually writing a novel. Making an outline before jumping into the first draft of your novel is a great way to organize your ideas, figure out your character arcs and plot sequences, and to lay out your scenes. Assuming, of course, you are among the writers who feel they benefit from an outline. We'll get back to that later. As helpful as outlines are, there are still some problems that can come up during the outlining process. The whole point of an outline is to figure out the whole or most of the story before you actually start writing the story, and this can get a little bit tricky, especially in cases where you don't know the characters yet or you feel the setting hasn't been fully fleshed out. Coming up with a satisfying plot through an outline can be difficult. So to help you through this, here are 4 common outlining problems and how to avoid them. Problem to avoid number 1, outlining. I mentioned before that not everybody likes to work from an outline, and I would get a ton of angry comments from pantsers if I failed to mention this. The comments wouldn't have a lot of structure and they wouldn't show a lot of planning, but I'd still get them. For some folks, writing an outline zaps their interest in the story, or they don't feel that they can come up with good ideas when creating an outline, or working from an outline makes their stories feel stilted and mechanical. I can totally see the argument here, and if you are this type of writer, then making an outline is a waste of time or even detrimental. Which is why I've included this in this list. If outlining doesn't work for you, avoiding it entirely is a viable and probably wise strategy. Of course, it's not quite so black and white. Problem to avoid number 2, outlining too much or too little. There's a tendency to lump all the people who outline and all the people who discovery write into one of 2 categories. Such a stark distinction is not always accurate or productive. Outlining really happens on a spectrum. Your outline could be a detailed, color-coded breakdown of every scene in your novel, or some quick notes that you made on the back of a napkin. Both of those are technically outlines, and both are totally viable. Following how someone else outlines might not work for you. While it can be useful to understand the structures and methods that someone else uses, following them to the letter may be counterproductive. Everyone has different information that they need to get from their outline. For example, you might write a really plot-focused outline, but leave the characters more vague to be discovered during your first draft. In my case, I generally outline the ending and the major beats of the story, so my outline really focuses on the high-level scene structure. I don't go into the detail of each individual scene. I find that this works really well for me. I find going into the detail and laying out every single individual scene during the outlining process to be difficult and just doesn't work for me. You might need something else. You might prefer the detailed scene-by-scene breakdown so that when you're drafting, you can focus on each individual scene without worrying about how it fits into the rest of the plot. Adapt your outlining process to your needs, remove parts of the process that feel confining, and add more detail where you feel you need it. Plan for the things that you feel you need to plan for. And most important, understand that there's more than one way to outline. In fact, I would say there's as many different ways to outline as there are writers out there, once you subtract all the writers who don't work from an outline. Problem to avoid number 3, not keeping your outline up to date. One of the common arguments against outlines is that they are confining. That once you get into drafting, if something doesn't work or you come up with new ideas, you're stuck following your outline. Now, there is a bit of truth to this in that an outline might prevent you from coming up with new ideas or hem your thinking into one direction. There's also the argument that if you're going to come up with new ideas while you're drafting, that's essentially discovery writing, so why are you bothering to make an outline if you're just going to come up with stuff through discovery writing? The counter-argument to that would be if you do discover a plot hole when drafting, or if you think of an interesting direction to take the story, then there's no reason you can't go back and change the outline. You should think of your outline as a living document, something that needs to be kept up to date with your story and reflect any changes that happen along the way. Of course, this shouldn't come at the expense of completing your draft, but if you get stuck in a plot hole or have a new direction you want to try, going back and spending a little bit of time reworking your outline could be worthwhile. I emphasize a little bit of time. Problem to avoid number 4, never finishing your outline. The goal in all this, if you haven't realized, is to produce a first draft. And you can't do that until you finish the outline. Eventually, you just need to pull the trigger and start drafting. It can be intimidating to start a draft, but you just need to do it. At a certain point, additional outlining may not be helpful and could even start to become detrimental. It's really hard to know if a story works until you at least get a first draft down. And you can't do that until, you start drafting. Outlines are a great tool and may make the difference between you finishing your novel and not finishing it. So don't let the outline come at the expense of what you're trying to ultimately achieve. Just like I was ultimately trying to achieve making you watch until the end of this video. I should have outlined that sentence a little more. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday and Friday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.